This is Roll Call for this edition of African Drums. The African drums are sounding.
Good evening. Welcome to this week's edition of African Drums, the television organ of the Cuffy 250 Committee, an organization dedicated to the empowerment of the Afro-Guyanese community through education and the encouragement of self-activity. I am Elsie and I will be your host for this evening's program. Villages are an integral part of Guyana's cultural landscape. One cannot adequately speak about the evolution of Guyana from emancipation onwards without locating the villages at the center of that discussion. Coming out of formal enslavement in 1838, the acquisition of land by the freed people became the first major collective manifestation of freedom. It was this land which they transformed into what we know today as villages. The setting up of these villages was not isolated. Starting with Victoria, this action was soon repeated across the length of the coastline from Essequibo to the Quarantine. Hence, what historians have called the village movement. Today, we want to focus on the first village, Victoria. Located on the east coast of Demerara, Victoria this year celebrates its 175th anniversary. I have with me in the studio two Victorians who will help us put in perspective the significance of Victoria and the larger village movement. Mr. Desmond Saul is the Vice Chairman of the Victoria Reconstruction Trust, Principal for the Foundation for Real Christian Education, Village Elder and Activist. Ms. Colleen Weatherspoon is a member of the committee responsible for the 175th anniversary celebration. And of course, they're both Victorians. Mr. Saul, Ms. Colleen, welcome to African Drums.
Thank you.
Okay, let us start right at the beginning. Here were people who were just out of enslavement, and in a matter of a year, they're beginning to set up villages. What accounts for the tremendous drive and foresight on their part?
Well, one can only imagine that what they were subjected to during slavery motivated them to work hard and to save their earnings so that they could buy landed property and not be subjected to what they had gone through during slavery. And this manifested itself in them being able to save a tremendous lot of money within a year so that they could make the down payment of close to $10,000 at that time, or 30,000 guilders, for the purchase of Plantation Northbrook. So I believe that the drive was the sufferings that they had gone through and their innate desire to be masters of their own destiny.
Okay, so the soon-to-be villagers pooled their resources in order to purchase Victoria. Would you consider this the start of the cooperative movement?
Yes, I believe so. Don't you think so, Colleen? Yeah. Yes.
Why would you consider this the start of the cooperative movement?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, yeah.
But why? What is significant about them?
Well, here were 83 persons coming from 4 different estates on which they were employed. And through some degree of networking, they had identified their need to become landowners, right? Now, just Northbrook alone had over 250 slaves working there, right? But when you think that out of the four estates, 83 of them came together to make this purchase, there must have been some degree of cooperation among them,
Yeah.
right? And that established a sense of trust, because only one of them could read and write, right? So they had to commit all this money into the hands of a few people to do what they had to do on their behalf. You see, so.
Okay. So walk us through the early story of Victoria. You said that 83 of them bought the land. Men, women, what? How did they go about cooperating, since there were no phones, there was no internet? How was this even possible?
We don't have the details of that, unfortunately, but I'm sure that there were people who used to be moving back and forth between the various plantations. We know that because if you go back to the preaching of Reverend John Smith and the fact that these slaves went to the church at Larry Souvenir, I think that's where it was located. So I believe that during the attendance at church and so on, they would talk and share ideas and this kind of thing. So that would be my my guess, that at these functions and at church they would share ideas and make plans and so on and so forth.
Okay. So Colleen, Mr. Saul said that there were 83 persons who purchased the land. Can you kind of give us a rundown? How many were women?
There were actually 4 women.
And as a woman from Victoria,
Yeah.
how does this make you feel, knowing that women played a significant role in the purchasing of the first free village?
Proud. Hardworking. Well, the strength of a woman can tell us a whole lot after we've all seen that women have played an important role in our plantation.
It's motivational.
Okay, what were some of the challenges faced in the early years of Victoria?
There was the perception, I believe, that as the slaves bought landed property, that they would move off of working on the estates. And so what used to happen is that the plantocracy would try to sabotage the work that was being done by the new landowners. So they would open the water from the estate, and they would flood the plantation, the villages, so as to force the villagers to go back onto the plantation to work. Now this presented quite a bit of a problem, and the villagers had to find a way to cope with this challenge. So there are 2 things that have come down to us from that period. One was a village bell, that whenever they would breach the dam to flood the village, the villagers would get the bell and ring it so as to summon all the people to come to repair the dam. Secondly, the next thing that has come down to us from that period is we have a real martyr in the village. And I had given to the technician,
The operator, yeah?
right, the operator, an artist's conception of our martyr, Belinda Hopkinson. Now, it'd be interesting if he can just put up the painting of this lady, because she had volunteered to go and guard the dam during one evening, and they found her the next day strangled by her own scarf, right? And so she became the first martyr of the village. Now, I don't know how many people have availed themselves of the opportunity to go and see the play that was just produced this year for the 175th anniversary called Victoria's Secrets. But in that play, she is featured very prominently as one of the people out of Victoria, right? And I think it's interesting that more of our young people know more about the brave act that this lady played in helping to secure the village from the shenanigans of the plantocracy.
And again, here we see another instrumental role played by women.
Yeah.
Okay, what was Victoria's early economy based on, and how has that changed or not changed from today?
The early economy of Victoria was based on agriculture.
Okay.
There was a lot of food production, and in fact Victoria was like one of the bread baskets of the East Coast. They produced a lot of coconut and cassava and ground provisions in general and fruit. And the coconut industry became very prominent, and the cassava industry became very prominent in the village's economy. There were other little things that also helped, because there was like coconut oil production as came out from the coconut industry. There was cassava bread and casrape and starch that were products that came out of the farming industry. So Victoria became known for its cassava and coconut products, and some of the byproducts of cassava and coconuts helped to develop the poultry and pig industry. So at one time Victoria produced a lot of pork, right? Because the byproducts from those two industries helped to facilitate that. We also had other things. We were entrepreneurs, because one of the first soda water factories on the East Coast was located in the Victoria Belfield area, and the grandfather of the current chairman of Banks DIH was the owner of that soda water factory in Victoria. They also had hotels there. There were the current Covan John police station, the C division of the police that's now at Covan John, was actually located in the Victoria Belfield area, as were the post office, the railway station, and all of these things. So Victoria was a thriving economy just after slavery.
Okay, and is it the same today? Is their economy still based on agriculture, and how well is the economy doing?
Well, there seemed to have been a neglect of the agricultural and the support infrastructure for agriculture, not only in Victoria but on the entire East Coast. And so agriculture that is non-rice based has suffered tremendously in all the villages. In fact, the drainage and the irrigation is quite a challenge for many of our farming communities. So no, we are not at the same level as we were like 40, 50 years ago. We have declined considerably, and as a result the unemployment in many of the villages is extremely high.
Okay, so I suppose that is a setback for Victoria.
It is.
Okay, what would you say are some of Victoria's greatest achievements?
Coming out of slavery, when the village was purchased, the slaves wrote what they considered to be a charter as to how the village should operate and how the management of it should take place. So that spawned the village movement, right? And they have been known as the forefathers of the village movement because of that charter that was developed by them, you see. What else can I say? We have had some very prominent chairpersons over the years. You had people like Mr. Stanley Roberts, Mr. Mason, LRD Ainsworth, and so on, who have been very prominent people in the political and civic movements in Guyana. And they've all come out of Victoria.
Okay. Colleen, you are on the committee for the 175th anniversary of Victoria Village. So
Yes,
tell us about some of the things that the committee is planning, and I see that you're wearing your Victoria shirt. So you can tell the viewers where they can get their shirts from, because I'm sure having this committee in place and the things that they've been able to put in place will be counted as achievements for Victoria.
Well, actually, you can uplift your t-shirts from Mr. Desmond Saul, his residence, and it's only $2,000 for one. The cost is pretty cheap. And basically, we are looking for more young persons to come on board, because we are not going to stop at make this event the last for this year. We're planning to continue, so we're asking that persons, young people, to just come on board, share their ideas, so that we all can be a part of this event, so that we all can put our input, so that at the end of the day we all can benefit from.
Okay, so tell me about one of the events that the committee is planning.
Or that we planned, because most of the events
Yeah.
Oh, most of the events have
Okay.
finished. Okay, so
Yes.
tell us about the events that have
Agricultural
passed.
fair.
Yes, we had agriculture fair, which was very, very much educational. We also had the play at the National Cultural Center. What else?
Mr. Saul, what else?
At the beginning of the year, we had some concerts in the village, and we had also a church service. You know, Victoria is a very religious community, and that's one of the things that the forefathers insisted on, that they set aside land for churches and also for schools, so that the young people could be educated and praise God in that order. And so we had a commemorative service this year in August for the 175th anniversary. The year is almost at an end, but we're hoping that there would be some kind of a commemorative coin and a commemorative stamp issued to commemorate the 175th anniversary. Last year, the Parliament passed a resolution number 57 of last year, to mandate the government to declare the 7th of November as National Villages Day, and also to produce a commemorative coin and a commemorative stamp for the 175th anniversary. Now, the government has agreed to produce these two items, and so we're looking forward in the near future for those two things to be produced.
Okay. And I'm sure the rest of the country will be looking forward to it as well.
I hope
some tangible celebration of our first free village. Okay, let's talk about your organization. It has been engaged in developmental work in the village itself. Tell us about the projects that the trust has been involved in.
Some years ago, there was a lot of complaint from the farmers that the drainage was killing their agricultural produce. And so the Victoria Reconstruction Trust lobbied the EU to get some money to build a coker which would control the flow of water through the village. That was a $10 million project which the Victoria Reconstruction Trust spearheaded. So that's one of the things that it has done. We've also sought to help in the maintenance of the village cemetery. And so for years, with help from other Victorians abroad, the trust has has undertaken that, but you know, it is an ongoing cost which the Victoria Reconstruction Trust cannot carry all the time, and so we are hoping that the local municipality would step in and do what they were supposed to do in the first place, which they're not doing. But that's one of the things that the Victoria Reconstruction Trust did. We're also hoping, and I know that the friends of the VRT have been financing an after-school program for kids in the village, and so they liaise with some of the local teachers, and they run this after-school program so as to help the kids with their work. They also run a sewing program and other little things to help the villagers.
Okay, and are the villagers in Victoria receptive to these programs? Do they support it fully?
Yes, the kids are on board when there's enough publicity that goes out to say to them that these things are happening. They do. But in some cases there is a lot of lethargy and non-participation because of misconceptions, right? And you know, one of the things that kills us is rumors and rumor mongering, and everybody likes a good rumor, whether it has base or not. And unfortunately this seems to thrive in our community very well. But I think that with the dissemination of factual information, we hope that we can counter some of this rumor that seem to be very destructive in its aim and goal. You know, so to answer your question, there have been spurts of great support and spurts of non-support. Yeah.
Okay, so there is tutoring going on because you obviously want to do educational development in the community. What other issues do young people in Victoria face?
One of the greatest thing is the drive for literacy and numeracy, and also the lack of job opportunities, and the two things are very closely linked. There's a very high dropout rate from the high schools and the schools in general, and so you have a lot of liming on the street corners, and as a result of that you have a lot of drug use. There's a lot of indulging in gambling, cockfighting and that kind of thing, which does not help to solidify the economic base of the community. So there's a lot of remedial work that really needs to be done in the village. But I don't think that our village is unique. You go through many of the villages and you see the same thing occurring. You know, so there needs to be an overall or overhaul of the social fabric of the villages, with a view to making the young people more involved in things. In transition, I would say that because of the fact of the current high non-educational achievement, you need to almost develop hands-on programs to make the young people participate in the development of themselves and the community. See, but you have to have that.
Okay, do you think this is an opportunity, because you did mention that it's similar in the nearby villages? Do you think that this is an opportunity for your trust to form partnerships with the other villages so as to combat the problem as a unit?
It's a very interesting question. We have been liaising on an informal level with folks in places like Ansgrove and Buxton, right? The school of which I'm a part, we run a remedial program to help students who have dropped out of the normal school system to come back into the education system and to learn a trade, right? At the Foundation for Real Christian Education, we do remedial academics, and we also try to teach skills like welding, carpentry, we've done sewing and tailoring and electrical installation. But for some reason there seems to be again another wave of dropping out and people not participating. Even though there's so many of them on the streets, you find great difficulty in getting them to come. Once again, misinformation, because the devil finds work for idle hands to do, and so a lot of rumors are created by idle minds so as to stop people from coming and participating in these programs. So I don't know, we have to have some kind of an initiative to counter that. But the collaboration that you talked about, we have been seeking help from the folks in Buxton, because Buxton has a very successful steel band program. And at the school, at the Foundation for Real Christian Education, we also have a steel band. And so we've been looking at handshaking with the Buxtonians to see how they can help us to revive our own program and to get more youth involved, because music is a great vehicle for teaching many, many things. And so if we can get our program going to the same degree that the Buxtonians have been able to get theirs, we might be able to do something better.
Okay, and how long has the trust, the Victoria Reconstruction Trust, been operational?
Operating? I think we started around about 1995. So we've been there for a while. We hosted in 2010 and 2011 what we call the Indabas, which is a village discussion group where we try to bring out everybody in the village to talk about some of the problems that we've had and to highlight the achievements also of our forefathers. And both of those Indabas were very successful. The third was not as successful. But since then we've had certain challenges, and so we've not had another Indaba since 2013, I think was the last one. We didn't have one this year. Sorry, 2012 was the last one. And so last year we didn't have one, and this year we didn't have one. But it's a challenge for us to revive that initiative, because unless you can sit and talk and voice what the concerns are and what the community feels are the issues that they have, then we can't come up with solutions.
Okay. And what advice do you have for people doing similar work, like the trust that you're a part of, in other villages?
Somebody has to be willing to sacrifice him or herself, because unless you're on the ground and you're committed to it almost like 24/7, you'd have a lot of advisors, you'd have a lot of people who tell you what to do, but nobody who will do anything. So so part of the challenge is getting people who have that commitment, to be there and to participate.
Okay, so Colleen has been a little quiet during the discussion, so I want to hear from you. What makes a village special? What makes your village, Victoria, special to you?
Apart from the little not attending the 175th anniversary, I think the togetherness, the support in terms of anything apart from like an accident or somebody probably, get into the village doing something that is not right, the togetherness is there. So I see that as being special, because it's not one person something, is all of us. Our togetherness, as I mentioned before, is there. So I think that's what's special about Victoria.
Okay. Mr. Saul, what do you think makes a village special, and what makes Victoria special?
A few things. First of all, Victoria, I don't think we can appreciate enough the work that was done by the 83 people who bought Victoria. because the buying of Victoria was the first such deal that was done anywhere in the Western world by freed slaves after the abolition of slavery. And that in itself is a tremendous achievement. Secondly, to have had people who are illiterate, right? People who are illiterate come together and by talking, formulating the code of operation of a village so that that code could become the foundation for the village movement is a tremendous achievement. What I find very interesting, and I don't know what is responsible for this, is that people outside of Victoria look up to Victoria for what our ancestors have achieved much more than the people in Victoria acknowledge the achievement of our ancestors. You see, what's responsible? I don't know, because you know, as you go around the world, you see people from different places and they're so proud of who they are and where they've come from. But we are just blasé about the fact that, okay, we're from Victoria, so big deal. I was talking to a cousin of mine just a couple of weeks ago, and she was telling me that her daughter, who resides in London, told her that they were celebrating Black History Month this year, and they were talking about achievements of ex-slaves and so on and black people around the world, and their focus was on Victoria. So when you imagine that people in England are celebrating Victoria and the achievements of our forefathers in Victoria, and here in Victoria we are playing personality and all this kind of crap, and we're not focusing on what our forefathers have been able to achieve, I think we're missing the boat, you know. But those are things that people have to wake up and appreciate for themselves. And I think here is where more education can be vital to that revitalization. Yeah.
Okay, so as a Victorian, your ancestors led the way.
Yes.
For the first free village and the village movement.
Yeah.
What is your current perspective on the reparations drive that is taking place right now in Guyana?
I think it's a good move by those who are spearheading that drive, but I think that at every step of the way they need to acquaint the descendants of slaves and former slaves that this is not going to mean that you're going to get a check in your hand for $10,000. They need to understand that when these reparations come, if they do, they will be in a collaborative manner so that things will be done that everybody will benefit from. And then that would begin to teach us to understand what the word community means. Because too often what we find happening in our communities, in our villages, is me first. So it's me, myself and I, and then God help the rest. Devil takes the hindmost. We have to get away from that. We have to begin to realize that we are our brother's keeper and none of us is an island. So if one sinks, we're all going to sink. When we can begin to understand that truism, then we'll be making progress. So all I can say to the people who are doing the reparation, I think it's a good idea, but don't let people go away with the idea that somewhere along the way they can get 40, was it the Americans that $40 on a mule or something like that? We're not going to get that. We might get something, but it's something that will benefit everybody in general, like a community road or a community canal or a community center. So it might belong to all of us, but if none of us do anything about it, it will collapse and disappear. Yeah.
Okay. So land is a major issue for people in general. Humans, we believe in having our own land. We are tied to the land. Is ancestral land an issue in Victoria?
I think it is an issue throughout the coastland, because in every village where land was bought, immediately behind the villages, there is still some Krong land. And that Krong land, the purchasers of the village were allowed to use that Krong land. So if you were a purchaser and you had a piece of land in the village, you were given a piece of land that was Krong land to use. So behind the villages, there's that portion of land. But what has been happening over the last little while is that people from other places have been coming in and eyeing those lands because there is no formal title that was given to the villagers for those lands. And so those lands should be tied to the villages in perpetuity. But this is not happening. And so when people see openings where they can come and dispossess you, they do that. And maybe it is part of our own negligence, but I think it is something that we have to fight for.
Okay, and perhaps this is one of the areas that the trust can look into, because people by themselves as an individual might not want to, you know, stand firm on the principle that this is our land, but together as a group, as a community, I'm sure a lot will be achieved.
Yes, and this brings us back to the thing of cooperation.
Yes.
If we, you see, the whole idea that spawned the Victoria Reconstruction Trust was that we should have an umbrella organization which does not remove the rights or the responsibilities of individual organizations, but that umbrella organization would function in such a way that they would be aware of whatever all the other organizations were doing, so that there'd be no duplication, there would be no friction, and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, because of the dynamics that take place in our communities, reaching that utopian state of having that one organization and everybody a part of it has not yet occurred, even though we've been trying for the last 10, 15 years to do that. But in my view, that's the way to go, because otherwise Tom has an idea, he wants to do something here, he gets somebody in the village, he sends them a few dollars, they do it. Somebody else has the same idea, he wants to do the same thing, he sends another person a few dollars, they come and they probably slap on a coat of paint on the same thing. You haven't gone forward.
Yeah.
You see? Whereas if you have one umbrella organization and everything comes through them, then you can target whatever comes in a more constructive manner. I'll give you an example of what I mean.
Sure.
Over the last number of years, we have tried to maintain the cemetery. Now, some money came in from individuals to the VRT, and we were able to do the maintenance of the cemetery. The VRT wrote GPL and the GPL operatives asking them that all the old utility poles that they replace in the community, if they can make them available to the VRT to pall the cemetery to stop it going into the canal. They responded and said yes. But between that response and the operationalization of getting the poles, didn't happen. And for 2 years now, we have been asking and asking and asking, please give us the poles. Just tell us where they are, we'll come pick them up or drop them to a spot and we will use them. Now everybody one day is going to go into that cemetery and take their own 6-foot plot. But nobody wants right now to cooperate to get those poles to pall the cemetery so that it does not disappear into the canal.
I understand.
So
Yes.
those are the challenges that we face, you know. And unless we can realize what cooperation means, and that's why when you go back to the 83 people who bought that land, they did a heck of a job. Because today, with all the more technology and all that we have, we can't come to do little things together.
Yes. Okay, as we're coming to the end of the program, is there anything that you want to say to the viewers with regards to Victoria, or just advice coming from the first? free village. Do you have advice for the viewers?
Just before we close.
Sure.
In reference to the 83 freed slaves, it wasn't only persons from Victoria plantations. You had persons from Enmore, Paradise. You had persons from Hope and Dutch Four. So in closing, it's not we need to start with ourselves. We cannot just sit and just say that, okay, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. If we do not allow ours to start from ourselves, at the end of the day, we would not get anywhere. So I just want to urge everyone to just not to relax and say this is Mr. Saul anniversary and this is the committee anniversary. This is all of us anniversary. Just let's come out as Victorians and put our best foot forward, and why not sure we're going to be successful.
And I'm sure people from the other villages will see this and will do the same in their villages.
Certainly.
We can learn from each other. I know for a fact that the model that Victoria became was used by a former US president to help to set up a similar community in southern Ontario in Canada for the settlement of American slaves who went to live in the community of Buxton in the southern Canadian city. So when you look at what has gone before, there's a lot that we can learn from. And I think that people, not only in Victoria, but all around us, we can look and see the good things that have happened and emulate it. And we can look at the mistakes that we've made and try to avoid them in the future. That's number one. Secondly, I know that previous to my generation, one of the things that the slaves had as their motto is that education is the vehicle out of poverty. I think in the villages we need to revise that saying and ensure that all the young people understand it. There are too many young illiterate people walking the streets of our villages. We have to get away from that because they're easily manipulated. They become cannon fodder for people who want to do illicit and illegal things, and we cannot develop our villages and our young people if we do not go back to education. So to me, that is the message that needs to go out loud and clear.
Thank you, Mr. Desmond Saul and Miss Colleen Weatherspoon, for being on African Drums, for sharing with us the history of Victoria, its current context, its achievements, its, well, challenges, and a way forward to ensure that Victoria remains alive and retains its glory as the first free village.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Victorians, I take the opportunity to congratulate you on your 175th anniversary. My father is actually from Victoria, and I used to live in Victoria, so I share in your challenges as well as your successes, and it is my advice to you to keep the momentum going. It is something that we need for all villages across Guyana to keep the momentum going and to do our part as villagers. Viewers, thank you for staying with us. This has been African Drums, the television organ of the Cuffy 250 Committee, an organization dedicated to the empowerment of the African Guyanese community through education and the encouragement of self-activity. Please like our Facebook page, Cuffy 250, and our YouTube channel, Cuffy 250, for videos of the show and for other activities. Also, please donate to the cause, and we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, cuffy250gy@gmail.com. This is the end of the program. I am Elsie Harry. Please join us next week.
We should get another plug for our shorts.
Yes!